Okay, thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. We are going to be talking about conference systems today. Something that maybe you weren't aware that we made. It's something that I wasn't aware of back when I was working with an integrator. It's an interesting, unique space that there's a lot of demand for, surprisingly enough, and all sorts of different facilities require these conversation systems, and there's lots of different ways that we can do it. And the TOA has our TS conference system. We'll be talking about our wireless first, which is a system that we've have existing, and then we'll talk about our new wired conference, which is brand new, and we'll talk about that as well. Here's the overview, talking about our history in conferencing, and then we'll be looking at both the wireless and wired systems, the applications, where they can be used, the features of each, and how to set them up. We have a lot of experience in conference systems. Since '78, we've been working to have a system that is easy to use and brings value to the customer. I know that there are still some units out there from 2004. There may be more, but I know that the TS-800 and 900 systems are still going strong. We did have a wired system, the TS-770, that has come and gone. And now we have our TS-D1100, which we'll talk about. Where can we use these? Why should I be listening to this conference? What's the point? Is this just a niche system that nobody uses? Not at all. I regularly provide quotes to my customers for the TS conference system, and they're in use quite a bit. Local, regional council chambers, town councils, corporate sites, universities use our stuff. Actually, school boards, the K to 12 school boards, when they're at the actual board office, they have requested quotes, and we have quite a few customers there. Anywhere where you're getting people in a space, they need to talk, they need to hear each other properly. And especially with town councils, there's going to be maybe an audience area where the public can come in and listen to what's happening, as well as maybe even ask questions. Maybe there's someone online. The TS conference system can handle all of that. Let me see if I'm doing this right. There we go. Hey, there's a picture. Wow. So one big feature we just recently, so you saw in the history photos of our previous TS-800 and 900 system, they were big and bulky, and we recently had a refresh, and we've come up with our TS-820 and 920, really slick looking units. A lot of thought was put into their design. And one of the big positives about our wireless feature, the TS-820, 920, the wireless, is that a lot of town councils may not have, I know that I've seen anyway, they just don't have an actual chamber where they'll meet like maybe bigger towns and cities do. So they'll actually meet in a multi-purpose space. And that means that the furniture moves, everything moves in this multi-purpose space. And so the TS system, the wireless system, fits in very nicely. You can just lay them out in any configuration you'd like, and they'll work just fine, and then clean them up afterwards. Very easy to get the meeting up and running, and it can be a portable system, or it can be, the head end can be located in a closet of the multipurpose room, and then all of the delegate stations can be collected and locked up later. So very flexible. When they were doing the redesign, they were really looking at to move away from the big silver box that you no doubt saw in the picture, and to make it a more sleek and efficient product. you can tell that they were calling it a noiseless visual. They wanted it as if it was appearing out of the table, and to be something that isn't so prominent. They wanted to just blend it in with the rest of the room, and I think they did a good job. Plus, they were very efficient. You'll notice that the front section there is actually the speaker. The buttons are placed prominently and easy to use. As I said, mobile layout is no problem. You can record meetings using either the internal memory or a thumb drive, and you can have a maximum for the TS-920. You can have a maximum of 192 delegates involved in a meeting. Plus, they were looking at the necessity for voting. How do we put that on the new revised unit? They really improved sound. They worked a lot on the new microphone. There are 2 bend flexible points on the microphone now instead of just 1. Plus, there's no need for a windscreen anymore. If you've used the previous models, there was always windscreens involved. No, that's no longer an issue. Feedback suppression, which is a big help, and software that can be used. I know a lot of town councils, they may have a clerk sitting off to the side working the meeting from their laptop, so that's also a feature. So the central unit, we'll just talk on a few points. If you'll notice on the bottom left, the aux and mic inputs. So on the TS-920, not only do you have the people talking from the delegate units, but you may want to have other sound incorporated and mixed into the meeting. So you can have up to 3 auxiliary inputs, as well as 2 wired mic inputs. And you're thinking, why would I want that if I've got all these delegate units? Well, as I mentioned, if it's a public meeting and the public is coming in and they want to have a question period for the town council, that's where this wired mic could be handy. They could step up to a podium in the aisle of the audience there and be able to ask their question. That sound will be routed to each of the delegates' units coming out of their speakers, and then they can address the questions. So that's very convenient. The TS-920 has 3 aux, 2 mics. The TS-820 has 1 aux, 1 mic. So a little less expensive, but a few less features. Line outputs for connection to the local codec via a USB audio interface so that they can tie in with Zoom meetings. There's a record out there if you want to record, send out a line to an external recording device. Top right, you'll see that's where the voting all begins. It can start there, start the voting process with those buttons on the central unit, as well as headphone volumes and so forth, and feedback suppressor control. The delegate units, you can see the battery just slips in underneath. And there is a monitor headphone jack on the bottom right there. We'll talk about that later. The voting keys are on the front. The monitor speaker takes up most of the front of the unit. So they really tried to make the best, most efficient use of the space. And it's come off as a very attractive, slick looking unit. You can see the chairman unit will have a priority button on the bottom left, so that if perhaps in order to make the meeting go well and efficiently, everybody has a certain amount of time to speak. And if I just happen to run over my time, the chairman can break in and talk over me and say, hey, Don, put a cork in it. Anyway, and then there's also a top right number of open mic settings. So you can have as many as 4 open mics so that when people are talking, 4 people can speak at one time. Not only does this reduce chaos and confusion. If every mic was open, everybody's yelling, what's the point? But also it helps cut down on feedback as well. Too many open mics, as you would imagine, can really generate a lot of feedback. All sorts of things you can do with speech priority, who talks first, who talks last, that type of thing. And as well, there's a timeout. So if there's no signal on a mic, it'll actually turn itself off, which is great. Very convenient. Feedback suppression is, of course, important when you're having any mic in a room where there's speakers. And there's a 7-point filter built into the central unit to squash any frequency that starts to act up. Plus, you can use the EQ output if you want it to be even more specific about certain frequencies that are causing issues. You can record a session, the audio from a session. So as I mentioned, there's a gig of internal memory, which gives you about just under 19 hours worth of meetings, or you can use a maximum of 32 gig USB thumb drive, and you can record that way as well. This might be handy just to understand what happened at the previous meeting, of course, and things like that. There's also with the voting's very easy to get going. You can, at the central unit, begin the voting. Of course, using the using the software, you can also generate voting that way. And basically, you're selecting one of three choices: yes, no, or undecided. And all the votes are tallied at the central unit or on the software, and you're able to share that information with the meeting. The TS-920 also has a second channel for interpreted language. So if you're having a bilingual meeting, the TS-920 works with that. So you can select the channel you want to listen to on your headphones and actually have a two-language meeting going on, which is very helpful. Make sure I didn't skip something there. There's external controls. So as I said, sometimes there's a clerk overseeing the meeting, and you can see from the PC on the left side where it says to the central unit, the clerk can turn mics on and off. They can request speech request cancellation. So if somebody wanted to speak and now doesn't want to, they can let the clerk know, just, you know, as if raising their hand. They put my hand down. You can start and stop voting, do all these different things from the PC. And plus, when you're coming from the central unit, you can get information from the central unit in that list as well. There's software that comes along with it that we provide, and it's software that you're able to adjust and customize. And the idea is that you can not only provide control, but also provide some interaction with different systems in the meeting room. Also, there's this is pretty handy actually. Because it's infrared, you'll notice that there are little domes in the ceiling. You can see the top left. There's a dome there showing its coverage pattern. And when a microphone is out of the coverage pattern, it'll actually flash, which is pretty handy to have. Or you'll get a low battery indicator as well. This is really convenient to let you know what's happening. Actually, we're going to talk about coverage area in just a few slides, but this is one of the handy tools that are included to help you set it up properly or to troubleshoot if you just can't hear that delegate for some reason. Oh, here it is right here. So when you're installing this, there's this great feature where if I'm the installer and now I've got, you know, my 91 delegate stations, they're all laid out on the tables. Everything's ready to go. I start it up. I actually have this test procedure that I can do. And if everybody is connected, the little red lights on the mic will flash, and you'll see on the central unit, okay, these are all installed. They're all connected. So I can see there's one chairman and 90 delegate units, total 91. So it's great. Really makes it more convenient for the installer. The external software here, you can see this is how it typically looks on a screenshot. There's a graphic area there where you can set up and install all of the different delegate stations. You can see there on the screen that there are two that are blue, and they are showing, if you look at the bottom of that screen there, it says blue shows their online status. So the two are online, the other two are offline. But you could see speaker requests if it's pink, or green if they're actually in the middle of speaking. And you can see all the different controls that the clerk would have to show them what's going on. Oh, and here it is here. Here's the voting screen tallying up things. Plus you can see who's in attendance when they have their mics on. for a total number of people in the meeting. Also, if they wanted to, if the customer is interested in having cameras integrated with their system, we can do that. It's all part of, pardon me, you can add a camera to it. So it's very much runs this way, where when you do the setup, the camera knows that if a person from delegate number 1 wants to speak, it will turn to this particular location. So it's very much a location-based thing. It's not following a voice, but it knows where delegate 1 is. So if you're integrating the camera, it's good to always set up the room. If you have to keep tearing the room down in a multi-purpose room or something like that, always set them up in the same way. But it's very convenient to have and pretty easy to integrate. I'm showing you a camera from PTC Optics because we found they work great with our system. We've been very successful having a number of cameras added to systems. So that's an option as well. So this is just to discuss setting it up, and it's actually very easy to do. You have a certain number of delegates. If you ever have called me before to ask for a quote, I'm always going to ask you about the ceiling height, because as you can see in the pictures, you can see the little black domes in the ceiling. They are the transceivers. They're transmitting and receiving infrared signal. And I have 2 different options for them, the TS-905 or the TS-907. And you can see on the left that using information, I can see the coverage pattern for either the 905 or 907, and I can tell you, and I know the furniture layout. If you sent it to me, the length and width of the area where the meeting's going to be taking place, I'll make sure to add the proper number of either 905s or 907s. 907, just to let you know, is for a higher ceiling. Ceilings above 15 feet. So anything 15 feet and below would be a 905. It's got a wider cone, and it will provide coverage for a wider area, whereas the TS-907, it's a tighter cone, a little tighter diameter, but will be able to reach that distance down to the meeting. I think that there's another. Yeah, so you can see there it is right there. The TS-905, it shows you the radius versus the ceiling height, same with the 907. And I'm also conscious of knowing that, as you can see on the diagrams at the right, the infrared signal comes out the back of the delegate unit. You can see the picture of the delegate unit at the bottom right. The the TOA insignia, that's where the infrared is coming out in a cone as well. And as long as the back of that unit is not covered by something, paper, maybe the furniture that it's sitting on, you're going to have no problem at all. So I'm just going to work out, I'm always going to need to know the ceiling height and the dimensions of the room. One thing I'm also conscious of, and maybe you can be too if you want to design it yourself, is I don't want to put the transceiver behind the people speaking. If there's a horseshoe shape like they typically have in a town council, I don't want the transceiver to be behind the horseshoe so that the person is blocking the infrared signal. It should always be within the center of the horseshoe so that it provides proper coverage. And then, the one tricky part of infrared is sunlight. So keep it a certain distance away from windows, as well as fluorescent lights. I've really only had problems over the last 10 years. I've really only had problems with sunlight twice. They're actually they provide a fantastic coverage. So it's never really been an issue, but it's always good, best practice to keep this in mind as well. Oh, and there's also antenna distributors. So in the ceiling, we would run coax RG6 back from the transceivers back to the central unit. And you can see there's different ways that you can do it, either just a transceiver directly back to the central unit or using distributors if more transceivers are needed. So there's different ways to do it, but we have the distributors to help you with that. There we go. So those 4 transceivers in the ceiling running back, each running back a line to the central unit. One little trick I want you to keep in mind, each of those cables needs to be the same length. If they're not in the same length, you'll be receiving things out of phase. So transceiver 1 might have a short cable and it's sending it faster than the other 3 and it can sound terrible. So as long as your cables are all the same length, getting back to the central unit, you're going to be fine. And as you can see at the bottom left, any configuration, because they're wireless, it's really a flexible system. So that brings us to our new unit, the TS-D1100. Maybe the end user is just done with batteries. They don't want to think about batteries anymore. Maybe their room is just flooded with natural light. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of different reasons why they wouldn't want the wireless. Then we now have this option of the TS-D1100. It is using Cat 5e cable, which is great because our last wired conference system had a very awkward DIN cable. I think it's like a multi-pin, very thick cable that was very awkward. And so I'm really quite pleased to be using Cat 5 now and all of the benefits that come with that. One of the benefits, of course, is PoE. So that's pretty awesome. No more batteries. You can actually have power over Ethernet to each of the delegate units. So that's fantastic. Now I can have up to 246 units. So if you've got a place that really has a massive demand for delegate units, we've got you covered in that as well. In a lot of ways, there's a lot of similarities to the wireless. At the top, though, I wanted to bring out that there's also new standalone mic and speaker unit, which is interesting. You can have that for even for small meetings, which is interesting. We'll talk about that, as well as some flush-mounted delegate units. So that's really exciting as well. I had mentioned it's identical to the TS-920 in its look, in its design, but to be able to have not only transmit signal, but also PoE is fantastic. So it's going to be a big plus. Operation mode, this is interesting. So with the TS-D, you have a few different ways to operate. It could be a standard where the chairman assigns who will talk next, maybe override, which is where a meeting where participants can talk in order. It also has voice activation, so the mic will open if it senses something, if it senses a signal, sorry. And then maybe it's just a presentation, so it could just be chairman only. So there's different ways that you can operate this system, and but it has the same built-in audio recording, just like the TS-820-920. Here's our flush mounts. So if your customer is looking for a permanent install, but they want their desks to be as clear as possible, and they are partial to having integrated units, we now have a flush mount unit that can be mounted into their furniture. So that's something that I'm interested. We don't have them as yet. They are on the way. We have the initial units, but the flush mounted units are on their way. So if anyone is interested in that, we'll have more information on those. Of course, all of the dimensions and so forth for whatever cuts need to be made to install them in the furniture. Here's this part which I think is interesting too. You can have these standalone wired mics with a speaker unit that sits on the table. So you can see here, if you have a huddle room where you've got a screen on the wall, max, 7, 8 people, you could have a much more compact meeting arrangement using these wired mics. little, for somebody who's on a budget or who has a number of huddle rooms that needs proper coverage, we can support you with that as well. Up to 32 units, you can see there that are wired directly to the central unit. Plus, we have an expansion box where we can add even more if they need to. But yeah, interesting. As far as accessibility, this was there was a lot of thought put into this as far as from the design side of things. I had mentioned that there's a headphone jack available for people who are not able to hear well, so you can do that as well. There's the automatic mic off function where if there's no signal, it will turn off. So that might be of need depending on who's using it. Plus, there was a lot of thought put into just the buttons, how things feel, how easy is it to use, and so I think they've done a good job here in thinking of that. As far as functionality, we had mentioned it, but the chairman's unit priority function, the chairman has priority, so they can override. And this will allow for smooth operation of the conference. Also, setting a number of open mics so the chairman can select a number of delegates who will speak simultaneously. This is new. Up to 8 delegate units for simultaneous operation is allowed. I think the previous was just 4. So if there's more interest, actually, I just had a discussion about this a couple weeks ago. They weren't satisfied with 4. And how do we override that? So the wired system offers 8 delegate units for simultaneous discussion, plus voice activation mode on the bottom right. You can just start talking. You don't have to keep pressing the button and then stop. Oh, I don't want to talk anymore. Press the button. So there's lots of ways that you can utilize this system that will best meet your client's needs. As well, there's a new function here that wasn't on the TS 820-920, and it has to do with connecting to maybe a Zoom or Teams meeting on site. What we were doing is using the line out audio, connecting through a USB interface, audio interface to connect to the codec, so that you could tie that in, and that worked very well. There's another option here where there's actually you can actually use the USB to connect the codec to the central unit to the codec, and just make that connection all the more easy to use. And there's a web browser application, so instead of worrying about RS-232 or something like that, if you wanted to connect a PC for the clerk, or just straight setup, now there is a browser application, so you can just do all the controls you need by a browser, which is pretty handy as well. So that's it. I think if I were to ask you to take anything away from this, I think that I've installed this myself, the TS-820-920, very easy to install. There's a little bit of ceiling interaction. You got to get to the ceiling to install, but once you run the cables, it's very easy to get going. I want to remind you as well that we are somehow immune from tariffs. Not somehow, I'll tell you why. Because we have everything made in our factories in Asia, so Indonesia and Japan and Vietnam and different places, and they come into Canadian ports. So we never go through the US at all, and we are not affected by tariffs. So that might be of interest to you folks as well if you're thinking about budgets and things like that. If you are interested in getting a quote or something like that, just let me know. Room dimensions, as I mentioned, number of delegates. Is there an audience? Do you need additional audio outside the room? We can do all sorts of different things, and we can put together a design for you. Yeah, I think that's it. So at this time, it's open to questions. I'm just going to look. I think James has got a question here. I think I missed something. Do the D1100 mic units daisy chain, or is the wiring star configuration into switches?
I think it's daisy chains off of
I think it's
to a
daisy
maximum
chain.
of,
Yeah, it's daisy chain, James.
we have that in the brochure. Yeah, I believe it's daisy chain to like a maximum of 32 per stack.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you bet.
The gain control, does the 82920 have the gain control as well?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, I think it does. Let me check on that, James. I think it does. How do the PTZ cameras integrate with the system via a network? You create a small local network, and they join that way. I can actually have a little wiring. If you email James, if you send an email, I can send you a little riser diagram just to show you how that connection happens. But it's basically a network connection, and we do it that way.
So we can take a
Yeah, that's right. Oh, hey James, how you doing? I know James. Anyway, so yeah, that's how that sets up.
we can take a moment longer if we'd like to. Just if there's any more lasting questions. Otherwise, we've got our giveaway up next. I stepped out a moment ago just to spin a digital wheel, so I already have the winner locked in.
Oh, you do?
I did.
Oh, I thought I was going to do
I
that.
took away all the suspense.
I'm not doing this anymore. I thought there was a big wheel.
Dr. Sound.